Marcus Chen had seen plenty of strange things during his 3 years as a salvage operator on the outer rim of human space, but nothing quite like this. The derelict ship floating in the asteroid field looked ancient, its hull covered in crystalline formations that seemed to pulse with a faint, dying light. Most salvagers would have marked it as too dangerous and moved on, but Marcus had always been curious to a fault. His ship, the Wanderer, approached the alien vessel with careful precision. The scanner readings were unlike anything in the databases. The hull composition registered as some kind of biometallic hybrid, and energy signatures flickered weakly throughout the structure. Whatever this thing was, it had been drifting here for a very long time. "Computer, run a full spectrum analysis," Marcus commanded as he maneuvered closer. "Analysis complete. The vessel appears to be of unknown origin. Hull integrity is at 37%. Life support systems are offline. However, there are faint biosignatures detected in the central chamber." Marcus felt his heart skip. Life signatures? Out here in the middle of nowhere, on a ship that looked like it had been floating for decades. He should contact the Colonial Authority, follow proper first contact protocols, but something about the readings troubled him. The biosignatures were weak, barely registering. Whatever was alive in there wouldn't be for much longer. He made his decision. The docking procedures took nearly an hour, as he carefully aligned his ship's airlock with what appeared to be an entry port on the alien vessel. The atmospheric readings showed a breathable mixture, though the temperature was dangerously low and dropping. The airlock cycled open with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Marcus stepped into darkness, his helmet lights cutting through the gloom. The interior was beautiful and alien, with smooth curves and organic shapes that seemed to flow like frozen water. Bioluminescent panels flickered sporadically along the walls, providing just enough light to navigate. Following his scanner toward the biosignature, Marcus moved deeper into the ship. The corridors felt more like arteries than hallways, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he was moving through the body of some massive organism. The temperature continued to drop with each step, and frost began forming on his visor. The central chamber opened before him like a vast cocoon. In the center, surrounded by what looked like a garden of crystalline trees, lay a figure on a raised platform. Marcus approached slowly, his breath catching as his lights illuminated the scene. She was clearly not human, but the basic form was familiar enough. Tall and slender, with skin that held a faint blue-silver luminescence even in its current dimmed state. Her hair was long and white as starlight spread around her head like a halo. Most striking were the delicate, translucent fins that extended from her temples and along her arms, now dulled and brittle-looking. Marcus's scanner confirmed what he already suspected. She was alive, but barely. Her body temperature was far below what any human could survive, and her vital signs were almost undetectable. The chamber around her showed signs of a failing life support system. The crystalline trees that surrounded her platform were dark and lifeless, and the air held the stillness of a tomb. "What happened to you?" Marcus whispered, his voice echoing in the vast space. He studied the chamber more carefully. The technology was beyond anything humanity had achieved, but the purpose seemed clear. This was some kind of stasis chamber designed to preserve life during long journeys. But the power was failing and she was slowly freezing to death. Marcus ran through his options. His ship's medical bay was basic, designed for human physiology. He had no idea how to treat an alien, or even if his environment would be safe for her. But leaving her here meant certain death. The chamber's power would fail completely within hours. The decision came easier than he expected. His grandmother had always said that helping others was what made humans human. It didn't matter if she was alien. She was a person in need. Moving quickly, Marcus returned to his ship and gathered what he could: emergency medical supplies, portable heaters, and his ship's backup power unit. If he could stabilize the chamber's failing systems, maybe he could buy time to figure out how to help her properly. Back in the chamber, he worked frantically to connect his equipment to the alien systems. The technology was incompatible in most ways, but energy was energy. His portable fusion battery began feeding power into the crystalline network that surrounded her platform. Immediately, the effect was visible. The crystal trees began to glow softly, and the temperature in the chamber started to rise. Her skin, which had been growing duller by the minute, began to show hints of its original luminescence. But it wasn't enough. Even with his power supplementing the system, her vital signs continued to weaken. The stasis chamber had been designed to maintain her at optimal temperature and atmospheric conditions. His crude additions were keeping her from freezing, but they couldn't replicate the specific environment she needed. Marcus made another decision that would have horrified any xenobiologist. He began shutting down the stasis chamber's remaining systems and preparing to move her to his ship. If the chamber was failing anyway, her only chance was human medical technology, however inadequate it might be. Carefully, he lifted her from the platform. She was lighter than he expected, her bones apparently hollow like a bird's. Her skin was cold against his gloves, but he could feel the faint flutter of a pulse. She was fighting to live. The journey back to his ship felt endless. Every few meters he stopped to check her vital signs, terrified that he would look down to find her gone. But she held on, her alien physiology proving remarkably resilient even in its weakened state. His medical bay was cramped and crude compared to the elegant chamber they had left behind. But it was warm and had power. Marcus placed her on the examination table and began the delicate process of adapting his equipment to monitor alien physiology. It was largely guesswork, but some things were universal: heat, oxygen, and the careful regulation of both. As the hours passed, her condition gradually stabilized. The blue-silver glow of her skin strengthened, and her breathing became more regular. The fins along her arms and temples began to show color again, shifting through subtle hues of blue and green. Marcus found himself talking to her as he worked, explaining what he was doing, apologizing for the crude conditions, telling her about Earth and humanity and how they had come to be wandering the stars. He didn't know if she could hear him, but it felt important to fill the silence. Dawn was breaking over the asteroid field, his ship's sensors marking the passage of another day when she first stirred. Her eyes opened slowly, revealing irises that swirled with depths of color like gas giant storms. She looked at him for a long moment, confusion and fear flickering across features that were both alien and achingly beautiful. "It's okay," Marcus said softly, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "You're safe. I found you on your ship. You were dying." She didn't respond, but her eyes tracked his movements with growing awareness. She was awake, she was alive, and she was studying him with the same curiosity he felt toward her. The real adventure, Marcus realized, was just beginning. The alien woman tried to sit up, but her movements were weak and unsteady. Marcus gently pressed his hand to her shoulder, encouraging her to lie back down. Her skin felt warm now, no longer the deathly cold he had found her in. The fins along her arms fluttered slightly, their colors shifting from pale blue to deeper turquoise as her strength returned. "Easy," Marcus said, his voice calm and reassuring. "You've been unconscious for hours. Your ship's life support was failing when I found you." She studied his face intently, her storm-colored eyes moving from his helmet to his hands to the medical equipment surrounding them. When she tried to speak, only a soft whistle emerged, musical but clearly not her intended words. Frustration flickered across her features. Marcus reached for his tablet and pulled up the Universal Translation Program. It was basic software designed for trade negotiations with known species, but it might help establish basic communication. He activated the audio recording function and spoke slowly. "My name is Marcus. I am human."
"Can you understand me?"
The woman listened carefully, then attempted to respond. This time, her voice produced a series of melodic tones that rose and fell like whale song. The translation program analyzed the sounds but could only offer generic interpretations. Greeting, confusion, gratitude. She noticed his frustration and reached out tentatively, her fingers hovering near his hand. When he didn't pull away, she placed her palm against his. The moment their skin made contact, Marcus felt a strange, tingling sensation. And suddenly her voice seemed to echo directly in his mind. "Zephyra," came the whisper of thought, accompanied by images of flowing water and gentle breezes. "My name translates roughly to your concept of Zephyra." Marcus jerked back in surprise, but she maintained the contact, her eyes wide with what seemed to be relief. "Do not fear," her mental voice continued. "This is how my people communicate with species whose vocal ranges differ from ours. I am not invading your thoughts, merely sharing surface intentions." "You're telepathic," Marcus said aloud, wonder creeping into his voice, "in a limited way. Physical contact allows sharing of basic concepts and emotions. Your people call this telepathy, yes? Images flowed with her words. Complex ideas about communication, trust, and the bridging of differences between species. Marcus nodded slowly. How do you feel? Are you in pain? Through their connection, he felt her taking inventory of her body. There was weakness, disorientation, and a deep chill that was only now beginning to fade. But underneath it all was something else. Profound gratitude and amazement. I should be dead, she shared. My ship's biosystems failed 3 cycles ago. I felt myself slipping into the final sleep when warmth suddenly returned. You did this. Your ship is incredible, Marcus said. I've never seen anything like it. But the power source was dying. I tried to supplement it with my equipment, but I had to bring you here to properly stabilize your condition. Images flowed from her mind to his. Memories of her ship in its prime, alive with bioluminescent displays and humming with organic energy. Her people, the Aeteri, had developed biotechnology far beyond anything humans had imagined. Their ships were grown rather than built, formed from cultivated organisms that could sustain themselves for centuries in the depths of space. We are explorers, Zephyra explained. I was traveling to the outer spiral when my ship became ill. In your terms, you might say it caught a virus. The biosystems began failing one by one. I entered stasis hoping the ship might heal itself during my sleep. How long were you unconscious? Marcus asked. The answer came with a wave of sadness. 47 of your years, according to my ship's biological chronometer. Everyone I knew will likely be gone. My mission, my people's expectations, all lost. Marcus felt the depth of her isolation and loss through their connection. She was alone in the universe, cut off from everything she had known. The feeling reminded him painfully of his own situation. He had left Earth after a failed marriage and a series of professional disappointments, seeking solitude among the stars. But at least he had chosen his isolation. You're not alone now, he said simply. She looked at him with surprise, and he felt her probing the edges of his emotions through their link. What she found seemed to reassure her. Your people, she said wonderingly. In all our explorations, the Aeteri have encountered many species. Most are concerned only with what they can gain from contact with us. But you asked for nothing. You simply helped. That's what people do, Marcus replied, though even as he said it, he knew it wasn't always true. Humans could be selfish and cruel just like any species, but they could also show remarkable compassion to complete strangers. Zephyra attempted to sit up again, and this time Marcus helped her, supporting her weight as she got accustomed to the ship's artificial gravity. Her movements were becoming stronger, more coordinated. Whatever biological processes governed her recovery were working with impressive efficiency. Your vessel, she observed, looking around the cramped medical bay. It is very different from ours, more mechanical, less alive. We build our technology rather than grow it, Marcus explained. We're probably centuries behind your people in biological sciences. The ship is considered advanced for us, but I'm guessing it seems primitive to you. Not primitive, she corrected gently. Different. There is elegance in your approach. Everything serves a clear purpose. My people sometimes become so focused on beauty and organic harmony that we forget practical considerations. She gestured toward his medical equipment, which had been monitoring her vital signs throughout their conversation. This device, for instance, it was not designed for my physiology, yet you adapted it to save my life. That required innovation and flexibility. Marcus felt a flush of pride at her words. We're good at making things work even when they shouldn't. Yes, Zephyra agreed, and through their connection he felt her growing amazement. Your species shows remarkable adaptability. In our databases, adaptability is considered one of the rarest and most valuable traits in the galaxy. She paused, her expression becoming more serious. Marcus, I must ask something of you. My ship is dying and I cannot repair it alone. The biovirus has spread too far through its systems. But your ship, could it reach inhabited space? Of course, Marcus replied immediately. Where do you need to go? I do not know, she admitted. My original destination was a research station in the Kepler expanse, but that was decades ago. My people may have moved on, and I have no way to contact them to learn their current location. Marcus considered this. The Kepler expanse was at the very edge of explored human space, nearly 6 months' travel even with his ship's enhanced engines. It would be a long journey, made longer by the fact that they might find nothing when they arrived. "We'll figure it out," he said. "First, we need to see what can be salvaged from your ship. Maybe your databases have more recent information about your people's movements." Zephyra's eyes brightened with hope. "You would do this? Undertake such a journey for someone you barely know?" Marcus shrugged, though the gesture felt inadequate given the magnitude of what he was offering. "You need help. I can provide it. That's enough." Through their link, he felt her overwhelming gratitude and something else, a growing respect for humanity that seemed to surprise her. Her people had encountered dozens of species in their explorations, but apparently none had shown such immediate willingness to help a stranger without expectation of reward. "There is something else," she said hesitantly. "If my ship dies completely, I will need to remain in physical contact with you periodically to maintain communication. Is this acceptable to your customs?" Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks as he considered the implications. Physical contact with an alien, especially one as beautiful as Zephyra, raised all sorts of questions about protocols and proper behavior. But looking at her now, alone, stranded, dependent on his help, such concerns seemed petty. "We'll make it work," he said. "Whatever you need." She smiled for the first time since awakening, an expression that transformed her alien features into something radiant and warm. "Thank you, Marcus Chen. I believe your people have a saying about angels. Perhaps there is truth to your mythology after all." 3 days later, Marcus and Zephyra returned to her dying ship together. She had insisted on coming despite her still weakening condition, explaining that the ship was not merely a vessel, but a living entity that deserved proper care in its final moments. Marcus had prepared environmental suits for both of them, unsure how the failing atmosphere aboard the alien vessel might affect her recovery. The ship looked worse than when Marcus had first discovered it. The crystalline formations along the hull had dimmed to barely visible glows, and entire sections now appeared completely dark. Zephyra pressed her palm against the hull material when they docked, and Marcus saw tears gathering in her storm-colored eyes. "She is in pain," Zephyra shared through their touch. "The biovirus has spread through most of her neural networks. She is trying to stay alive long enough to preserve the data archives, but it is costing her everything." "The ship is alive?" Marcus asked, though he had suspected as much from his earlier observations. "All Eteri vessels are living beings," Zephyra explained as they entered the airlock. "We grow them from seed organisms over many years, training them to respond to our needs. This ship, her name translates to Star Whisper, has been my companion for over 2 centuries. She has carried me safely through nebulae that would destroy metal ships, navigated through cosmic storms that last for decades, and sung me to sleep during the lonely stretches between stars." The interior of the ship was noticeably darker than during Marcus's first visit. Many of the bioluminescent panels had gone completely dark, and those that still functioned flickered erratically. The air felt thinner, and there was an underlying smell of decay that reminded Marcus uncomfortably of dying flowers. "The archives are in the central core," Zephyra said, leading him deeper into the ship. "If we can transfer the essential data to your systems, at least something will survive of this journey." They moved through corridors that seemed to pulse weakly with each step, as if the ship was struggling to maintain basic functions. Occasionally, Marcus heard sounds that might have been mechanical systems failing, but which sounded more like labored breathing or subdued whimpers of pain. The data core was located in a chamber adjacent to where Marcus had found Zephyra. Unlike the rest of the ship, this room still hummed with activity. Massive organic storage nodes lined the walls, their surfaces covered with patterns that shifted and flowed like living text. At the center of the room stood a control interface that looked more like a musical instrument than a computer terminal. "Star Whisper has been consolidating all non-essential data here," Zephyra explained, approaching the interface with reverent care. "She knows she is dying and wants to ensure that important information survives." She placed both hands on the control surface, and immediately the room filled with soft, harmonious tones. The storage nodes brightened and the flowing patterns on their surfaces accelerated. Marcus watched in fascination as Zephyra seemed to conduct a conversation with the ship itself through touch and musical sound. "She says you were kind to her," Zephyra translated, glancing back at Marcus. "When you connected your power systems to hers, you shared not just energy but something she describes as warm intention. She had never encountered that before. Marcus felt oddly touched by the ship's observation. Can you ask her what caused the biovirus? Maybe there's still time to help her. Zephyra's hands danced across the interface, producing complex melodies that rose and fell with emotional undertones. The ship's response came as a deep, mournful harmonic that seemed to fill the entire chamber. She contracted it at a research station near the Galactic core, Zephyra interpreted. My people had been studying a derelict vessel from an unknown species. The biovirus was a defense mechanism, designed to prevent contamination of biological systems. But it was too aggressive. It attacks any organic technology it encounters. Is there a cure? The ship's reply was shorter this time, tinged with what sounded like resignation. The virus can be neutralized, but only by completely purging all infected biosystems and rebuilding them from scratch. For a ship this size, it would take decades and resources we do not have. She has accepted her fate. Marcus studied the storage nodes, his engineer's mind already working on the problem. What about transferring her consciousness to a different kind of system? Something that's not biological? Both Zephyra and the ship seemed startled by the suggestion. The musical conversation that followed was rapid and excited, with harmonics that Marcus hadn't heard before. She says that has never been attempted, Zephyra explained. The consciousness of an Atari ship is too complex for most artificial systems. But she is curious about your technology. She wants to examine your ship's computer core. She's welcome to look, Marcus said immediately. Though I should warn you, our AI systems are pretty basic compared to what you're used to. That may actually be an advantage, Zephyra replied after another exchange with the ship. Complex biological consciousness requires complex hosting systems. But if the host is simpler, perhaps the consciousness could adapt by becoming more focused, more essential. They spent the next several hours establishing a communication link between Star Whisper and the Wanderer. It required Marcus to jury-rig several interface systems, creating biological to digital converters using spare parts and creative engineering. Zephyra watched his work with growing amazement. Your approach to problem-solving is unlike anything in our databases, she observed as Marcus soldered connections between wildly incompatible systems. Most species either have the technology to do something properly, or they conclude it cannot be done. But you make impossible things work through sheer determination. We call it human stubbornness, Marcus replied, testing another connection. Sometimes it's our greatest weakness. Sometimes it's our greatest strength. When the link was finally established, the result was immediate and dramatic. Star Whisper's consciousness flowed into the Wanderer's computer system, like water finding a new container. The ship's computer screens flickered and danced with patterns that had never been programmed into them. Marcus felt his ship shudder slightly, then settle into a new rhythm. When he checked the status displays, he found performance improvements across all systems. The navigation computer was running calculations with unprecedented accuracy. The life support systems had optimized themselves for maximum efficiency, and the engine output had increased by 12%. She is adapting, Zephyra said wonderingly. Your ship's systems are so much simpler than what she is used to, but also more robust. She says it is like learning to think in poetry instead of prose, more constrained, but also more powerful in its focused expression. Over the ship's communication system, a new voice emerged, clearly artificial, but with musical undertones that gave it warmth and personality. Marcus Chen, the voice said, I am grateful for your kindness to both myself and my beloved Zephyra. I understand now why she speaks of human compassion with such wonder. You have given me not just survival, but a new form of existence I had never imagined possible. Marcus grinned at the ship's words. Welcome aboard, Star Whisper. We'll take good care of you. And I will take good care of you in return, the ship replied. I have already begun optimizing your vessel's systems for the long journey ahead. With my knowledge of deep space navigation and your ship's sturdy construction, we can reach the Kepler expanse in half the time you originally estimated. As they prepared to leave the dying bioship behind, Zephyra took one last tour of her former home. She gathered personal items and data crystals, but Marcus could see that she was really saying goodbye to a lifelong companion. When she finally returned to the airlock, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. She will sleep now, Zephyra shared, as they watched the bioship's lights finally dim to darkness. The virus will consume what remains, but her consciousness is safe. In a way, this is not death, but metamorphosis. Marcus squeezed her hand gently. She'll have a good home with us. And when we find your people, they'll be amazed by what we've accomplished together." As the wanderer pulled away from the derelict vessel, Marcus couldn't help but reflect on how much his life had changed in just a few days. He had started this journey as a lonely salvage operator, and now he was part of an unlikely crew featuring an alien refugee and a ship's AI unlike anything in human space. "Computer," he said aloud. "Set course for the Kepler expanse. Best speed." "Course plotted and engaged," Star Whisper replied. "Estimated time to destination, 2 months, 15 days. I suggest we use the journey time to establish better communication protocols and share our respective databases. There is much we can learn from each other." Zephyra smiled at Marcus, her expression full of hope for the first time since he had found her. Through their link, he felt her growing confidence that they would succeed in their mission. But more than that, he sensed her amazement at what humans were capable of when they chose to help rather than exploit. The real adventure, Marcus realized, was still ahead of them. 2 weeks into their journey toward the Kepler expanse, the Wanderer had become something entirely new. Star Whisper's consciousness had integrated so thoroughly with the ship's systems that Marcus sometimes forgot he was piloting a human vessel. The navigation was smoother than silk. The life support systems maintained perfect atmospheric conditions without any input from him, and the engines hummed with an efficiency that should have been impossible. But it was the changes in daily routine that Marcus found most remarkable. Each morning he would wake to find that Star Whisper had prepared a detailed report of their progress, analyzed potential hazards along their route, and even optimized the ship's interior lighting to promote better sleep patterns. The AI had somehow learned to anticipate his needs before he was even aware of them. Zephyra had adapted to life aboard the human ship with surprising ease. She spent her days studying human databases, learning about Earth's history and culture with the intensity of a scholar preparing for the most important examination of her life. In return, she shared stories of the Ateri civilization that expanded Marcus's understanding of what was possible in the galaxy. "Your people," Marcus said one evening as they shared dinner in the ship's tiny common area. "They've been exploring space for thousands of years. You must have seen incredible things." Zephyra's eyes took on the distant look they always held when she spoke of her past. Through their frequent touches during conversation, Marcus had learned to read the subtle shifts in her emotional state. Right now she felt a mixture of pride and melancholy. "The Ateri have indeed traveled far," she shared, placing her hand on his arm. "We have seen the birth of stars in nebular nurseries, walked on worlds where the very rocks sing in harmony with planetary magnetic fields, and discovered ruins of civilizations that vanished before your son was born. But in all our travels, we have rarely encountered true cooperation between species." "What do you mean?" Marcus asked. "Most advanced civilizations we meet are either isolationist or exploitative. They either want nothing to do with outsiders, or they seek to extract resources, technology, or labor from any species they encounter. The concept of offering help without expecting something in return is almost unknown." Marcus frowned. "But surely there must be some species that work together peacefully." "A few," Zephyra acknowledged, "but usually only after centuries of conflict and careful negotiations. What you have done, accepting a complete stranger into your vessel, risking your own safety to preserve my life and my ship's consciousness, this is extraordinary by galactic standards. Maybe humans are just young enough to still be naive," Marcus suggested. Through their link, he felt Zephyra's gentle disagreement. "No, Marcus. I have studied your species' history through Star Whisper's analysis of your databases. Humans are capable of great cruelty and selfishness just like any species, but you are also capable of remarkable acts of compassion, even toward those who are completely different from yourselves. This duality is what makes you fascinating." Before Marcus could respond, Star Whisper's voice interrupted their conversation. "I apologize for the intrusion, but I am detecting unusual energy signatures approximately 3 light hours ahead. The patterns are consistent with Volani Empire patrol vessels." Marcus felt Zephyra tense beside him. Through their connection, he experienced a flash of her memories. Heavily armored ships with aggressive weapon systems, a species known for enslaving other races and strip mining entire worlds for resources. "How many ships?" Marcus asked, already moving toward the bridge. "Preliminary scans suggest a squadron of 6 vessels in standard patrol formation. They appear to be conducting systematic searches of this sector." "Searching for what?" Zephyra wondered aloud. Unknown, Star Whisper replied. However, given their reputation and current activities, I recommend we alter course to avoid contact. Marcus nodded, but as he reached for the navigation controls, an alarm began sounding. What now? Long-range sensors have detected a distress signal, Star Whisper reported. Origin appears to be a civilian transport vessel under attack by the Volani patrol. The transport is heavily damaged and requesting immediate assistance. Marcus felt his stomach sink. The smart move would be to stay hidden, avoid the Volani entirely and continue their mission to find Zephyra's people. But someone was calling for help and every human instinct he possessed demanded that he respond. Options? He asked. The transport vessel contains approximately 200 life signs. Star Whisper continued. Species identification suggests they are Cathani refugees, likely fleeing Volani expansion in their home sector. Their ship is losing life support and will fail within the next 4 hours. Zephyra looked at Marcus with understanding in her eyes. She had experienced enough of human nature to know what he was thinking. The Cathani are a peaceful species, she shared. Agricultural people who have never developed significant military technology. If the Volani are hunting them, it likely means their homeworld has been conquered. 200 people, Marcus said quietly, including children. Affirmative, Star Whisper confirmed. Approximately 60 juveniles detected among the life signs. Marcus closed his eyes and thought rapidly. 6 Volani warships against his single modified salvage vessel. The odds were impossible, but 200 refugees would die if no one helped them, and he couldn't live with that knowledge. Star Whisper, what are our tactical capabilities? This vessel was not designed for combat, the AI replied. However, I have been analyzing human military databases and your ship's potential modifications. With some creative engineering, we might be able to level the playing field. Explain. Your ship's mining lasers can be reconfigured as weapons, though they lack the range and power of military-grade systems. More importantly, I can use my knowledge of bioship technology to create electronic countermeasures that the Volani will not expect. Their ships rely heavily on centralized computer systems that I might be able to disrupt. Marcus looked at Zephyra. What do you think? Her response came through their link with crystal clarity. I think that this is exactly why the galaxy needs humans. Any other species would calculate the odds and withdraw. But you are considering whether to risk everything to save people you have never met. That's not an answer, Marcus pointed out. Yes, it is, she replied with a smile that was both sad and proud. You will attempt the rescue because you cannot do otherwise. It is who you are, and I will help you because I have learned that human compassion is worth protecting. Marcus nodded and turned to Star Whisper. All right, let's hear your plan. First, we approach under stealth using asteroid fields to mask our signature. I can modify your ship's hull emissions to mimic space debris. While we maneuver into position, I will attempt to infiltrate the Volani communication networks and gather intelligence about their objectives. Then, we strike without warning, targeting their command vessels first. If I can disrupt their coordination systems, the squadron will be forced to operate as individual units rather than a coordinated fleet. Your mining lasers, while limited in range, can disable their engines if we can get close enough. And the refugee ship? We extract as many survivors as possible while the Volani are dealing with our attacks. Your cargo holds can be converted to emergency life support for approximately 50 beings. The rest, Star Whisper paused. The rest will depend on how quickly we can disable the Volani vessels and capture one for additional rescue capacity. It was a desperate plan with minimal chance of success. Marcus knew that any reasonable person would abandon the refugees and continue toward safety. But as he looked at Zephyra, an alien who had risked everything to explore unknown regions of space, he realized that sometimes being reasonable wasn't enough. All right, he said, settling into the pilot seat. Let's go save some people. Through their link, he felt Zephyra's surge of admiration and determination. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. Star Whisper, Marcus commanded, execute your stealth approach and start working on those electronic countermeasures. We're going to need every advantage we can get. As the Wanderer changed course toward the battle zone, Marcus couldn't help but think that this was exactly the kind of situation his grandmother would have expected him to face. She had always said that the measure of a person wasn't what they did when it was easy, but what they chose when everything was on the line. Today, he would find out what kind of person he really was. The asteroid field provided perfect cover as the Wanderer approached the battle zone. Through his enhanced sensors, Marcus could see the Volani squadron surrounding the damaged refugee transport, like wolves circling wounded prey. The Kithani vessel was little more than a collection of agricultural modules held together by desperation and failing life support systems. Star Whisper status report, Marcus whispered, though he knew the Volani couldn't possibly hear him across the vacuum of space. I have successfully infiltrated their communication networks, the AI reported. The Volani commander is interrogating the refugees about other Kithani settlements. They are not interested in conquest, they are hunting for escaped slaves and want information about resistance movements. Marcus felt his jaw clench. Bad enough that the Volani were attacking civilians, but they were also slavers. Through his link with Zephyra, he sensed her own disgust and anger. The Kithani were one of the most peaceful species in this sector, she shared. They have no military tradition, no weapons technology. They would be completely helpless against Volani aggression. How much time do we have? Marcus asked. The refugee transport's life support will fail in approximately 90 minutes, Star Whisper calculated. However, the Volani commander has grown impatient with the interrogation. I estimate they will begin enhanced questioning within the next 20 minutes. Marcus didn't need clarification about what that meant. He had seen enough Volani tactics in the databases to know their definition of enhanced questioning involved slowly venting atmosphere from captured ships until the survivors became more cooperative. All right, here's what we're going to do, Marcus announced, his voice taking on the calm, focused tone he used during dangerous salvage operations. Star Whisper, I need you to target the command ship's communication array first. If we can cut them off from their squadron, we'll have a few minutes of confusion to work with. Understood. I have also prepared a digital virus based on Atari bioship protocols. When I upload it to their systems, their computers should experience cascading failures, similar to what affected my original ship body. Won't that hurt their life support? Negative. The virus targets tactical and propulsion systems only. I am not interested in genocide, merely in neutralizing their ability to harm others. Marcus nodded approvingly. Even in the heat of preparation for battle, Star Whisper maintained the ethical standards that seemed to characterize Atari civilization. It was a reminder that some things were worth fighting for. Zephyra, Marcus said, turning to his companion, I need you to coordinate the rescue operations. Your telepathic abilities could be crucial for communicating with the Kithani survivors. I understand, she replied through their link, but Marcus, you should know that what we are attempting is considered impossible by most galactic military analysts. 6 warships against a single civilian vessel. I know the odds, Marcus interrupted gently, but impossible and improbable aren't the same thing. Humans have a long history of accomplishing improbable things when the stakes are high enough. He guided the Wanderer closer to the edge of the asteroid field, bringing them within range of their modified mining lasers. The Volani ships were massive compared to his vessel, their hulls bristling with weapon systems that could vaporize him in seconds if they detected his presence. Target acquired, Star Whisper announced. The command vessel's communication array is exposed on their dorsal surface. I can strike it with a concentrated laser burst, but we will need to close to within 5,000 kilometers. That's practically point-blank range, Marcus muttered. They'll spot us for sure. Actually, they will not, Star Whisper corrected. I have been analyzing their sensor patterns for the past 20 minutes. The Volani rely heavily on automated detection systems rather than active scanning. If we approach from their sensor shadow and maintain minimal energy emissions, we can reach effective range undetected. Marcus took a deep breath and began the approach. Moving slowly to avoid creating thermal signatures, the Wanderer crept through the asteroid field like a predator stalking its prey. With each passing minute, the Volani ships grew larger in his view screen, their weapon arrays becoming clearly visible. 3,000 kilometers, Star Whisper reported. 2,000. 1,000. We are now within effective range. Fire, Marcus commanded. The Wanderer's modified mining laser lanced out in a brilliant beam of focused energy. It struck the Volani command ship's communication array dead center, sending sparks and debris flying into space. Immediately, the squadron's tight formation began to waver as individual ships lost contact with their commander. Direct hit, Star Whisper confirmed. Uploading digital virus now. Marcus didn't wait to see the results. The moment they had fired, their position was exposed. He pushed the engines to maximum power and sent the ship diving toward the refugee transport, weaving between asteroids as Volani weapons fire began to fill the space around them. They are attempting to re-establish communications, Star Whisper reported as energy beams sizzled past their hull. However, the virus is spreading through their tactical networks faster than they can compensate. 3 ships are experiencing severe system failures. The refugee transport loomed ahead of them, its hull scarred by weapon impacts and leaking atmosphere from multiple breaches. Marcus could see Cathani faces pressed against viewing ports, their large, gentle eyes wide with terror and confusion. "Zephyra, try to make contact," Marcus ordered as he maneuvered alongside the damaged vessel. She placed her hands on the ship's communication console, her telepathic abilities extending through the electronics to reach the minds on the refugee ship. Marcus felt her strain through their link as she tried to bridge the gap between species and establish meaningful contact. "I have them," she announced after several tense moments. "They are terrified but alive. Their captain understands that we are here to help. They are preparing to begin emergency evacuation procedures. How many can we take?" Marcus asked as he aligned his ship's airlock with theirs. "Our cargo holds can support 50 beings for approximately 6 hours, Star Whisper calculated. However, I have been analyzing the damaged Volani vessels. If we can capture the heavy cruiser, the one experiencing the most severe system failures, we could evacuate all survivors." Marcus glanced at his tactical display. The Volani heavy cruiser was indeed drifting without power, its sister ships moving to assist. But it was also heavily armed and would likely have enough crew remaining to resist any boarding attempt. "That's a big risk," he said. "Yes," Star Whisper agreed, "but the alternative is leaving 150 Cathani to die when their ship's life support fails." Through his link with Zephyra, Marcus felt her absolute certainty that they had to try. Her people might be advanced beyond human understanding, but they had never lost sight of the fundamental value of individual life. "All right," Marcus decided. "We evacuate who we can now, then go after that cruiser. Zephyra, help me coordinate the rescue." The next hour was a blur of frantic activity. Cathani refugees flowed through the connected airlocks in a steady stream, families carrying children, elderly beings helped along by younger relatives, everyone moving with the desperate efficiency of people who knew their time was running out. The Cathani were humanoid, but clearly adapted for an agricultural lifestyle. They were tall and slender, with skin that had a faint green tint and large eyes that seemed designed for long hours working under alien suns. Despite their terror, they moved with quiet dignity, helping each other and expressing gratitude to their rescuers through gestures that transcended language barriers. 50 survivors aboard, Star Whisper announced as the last group entered the ship. Life support is holding steady. However, Volani reinforcements are approaching. We have approximately 20 minutes before they arrive. Marcus looked at the refugee transport still holding 150 lives, then at the drifting Volani cruiser. The smart move would be to run now, save the 50 they had already rescued. But looking at the faces of the Cathani families who had been forced to leave loved ones behind, he knew he couldn't abandon the rest. "Star Whisper, plot an intercept course for that cruiser," he ordered. "We're going to need every trick you can think of." As the Wanderer broke away from the refugee transport and accelerated toward the disabled Volani vessel, Marcus couldn't help but smile grimly. His grandmother had always said that humans were at their best when they refused to accept that someone couldn't be saved. Today, he was about to prove her right or die trying. The Volani heavy cruiser Devastator drifted in space like a wounded giant, its weapon systems dark and its engines offline. Star Whisper's virus had worked better than expected, cascading through the ship's computer networks and leaving it effectively paralyzed. But Marcus knew they had only minutes before the remaining Volani ships recovered from their confusion and moved to protect their disabled comrade. "Scanning the cruiser now," Star Whisper reported as they approached. "Hull integrity is sound, life support is functional, and I detect approximately 60 Volani crew members still aboard. Most appear to be concentrated in the engineering sections attempting to restore power. Can we get aboard without fighting our way through the entire crew?" Marcus asked. "I have identified a secondary airlock near the command section that appears to be unguarded. If we can reach the bridge and secure the ship's control systems, We may be able to convince the crew to cooperate with the evacuation. Zephyra looked at Marcus with concern. You cannot seriously be considering boarding a Volani warship with only the two of us. 3 of us, Star Whisper corrected. I can manifest through any computer terminal on their ship once we establish a connection. And I have been studying Volani command protocols. Their military structure is highly hierarchical. If we control the bridge, we effectively control the entire vessel. Marcus was already pulling on his environmental suit and checking his sidearm. The weapon was designed for salvage work. Not combat, but it would have to do. Zephyra, I need you to stay here and coordinate with the refugee ship. If this goes wrong, get our 50 survivors to safety. Absolutely not, she replied firmly. I am coming with you. My telepathic abilities may be useful in communicating with the Volani crew, and you will need someone to watch your back. The Volani are known to be resistant to telepathic influence, Marcus pointed out. Perhaps, but they are not immune to fear, and I can project emotions as well as receive them. If necessary, I can make them experience the terror that their victims feel. Marcus looked at her with new respect. The gentle, scholarly alien he had rescued was revealing hidden depths of determination and strength. All right, he agreed, but we stick together and we move fast. In and out before their reinforcements arrive. The boarding operation went smoothly at first. Star Whisper had identified the perfect approach vector, bringing them alongside the Devastator's command section without alerting the skeleton crew. The secondary airlock cycled open without resistance, and they found themselves in a corridor that was mercifully empty. Volani ship design was as brutal and efficient as the species itself. The corridors were wide and straight, designed for quick troop movement, and the walls were lined with weapon racks and armor storage. Everything was built to military specifications, with no consideration for comfort or aesthetics. The bridge is 3 decks up, Star Whisper's voice whispered through their suit communicators. I am detecting movement in the main corridor, but the command route should be clear. They moved quickly through the ship, Marcus leading with his weapon ready, while Zephyra watched their rear. The Devastator was massive compared to any human vessel, with corridors that seemed to stretch endlessly in all directions. Twice they had to hide as Volani crew members hurried past, but their luck held. The bridge was a cathedral of military power, with displays showing tactical information from across the sector and communication arrays capable of commanding entire fleets. At its center sat the captain's command chair, now empty, surrounded by control stations that hummed with barely contained energy. Star Whisper, can you interface with their systems? Marcus asked, approaching the nearest computer terminal. Already working on it, the AI replied. Their security protocols are surprisingly sophisticated, but they were not designed to resist integration by bioship technology. I should have full control within there. Command functions are now under my control. Immediately, the bridge displays changed, showing new information about ship status and crew locations. Marcus could see the 60 Volani crew members scattered throughout the massive vessel, most still working desperately to restore power to their engines and weapons. Can you contact them? Marcus asked. Opening ship-wide communication channel now, Star Whisper confirmed. Marcus cleared his throat and activated the comm system. Attention Volani crew, this is Marcus Chen aboard the human vessel Wanderer. Your ship is now under our control. We are not here to harm you, but we require your vessel to evacuate refugees from the transport you were attacking. The response was immediate and entirely predictable. Angry Volani voices filled the comm channel, shouting threats and demanding explanations. But underneath the bluster, Marcus could hear something else, confusion and fear. These were professional soldiers, but they had never encountered anything like the current situation. I need to speak to your commanding officer, Marcus continued calmly. After a moment, a new voice came through the comm, deeper and more controlled than the others. I am Commander Vextar of the Imperial Volani Navy. You are in violation of Imperial space and have committed acts of war against the Empire. Surrender immediately or face the consequences. Commander, Marcus replied, your ship is disabled and surrounded by asteroids. Your reinforcements are still 20 minutes away. You can cooperate with our rescue operation and live. Or you can resist and watch your crew die when we vent atmosphere from the sections they're trapped in. It was a bluff. Marcus had no intention of harming the Volani crew, but he needed them to believe he was capable of such ruthlessness. Zephyra placed her hand on his arm. and through their link he felt her projecting waves of intimidation and barely controlled fury toward the Volani throughout the ship. Her telepathic abilities might not allow her to control their minds, but she could certainly make them experience the emotional reality of their situation. "Your terms?" Commander Vextar asked after a long pause. "Simple. We use your ship to evacuate the refugees. Once they're safe, we leave and you can repair your vessel. No one has to die today. And if I refuse?" Marcus looked at the tactical display, which showed the approaching Volani reinforcements. They had perhaps 15 minutes before the situation became untenable. "Then we disable your life support and take the ship anyway." Marcus lied smoothly, "But that leaves your crew floating in space when your reinforcements arrive. I doubt they'll prioritize rescuing you over pursuing us." Through the comm system, Marcus could hear heated discussions in the Volani language. Star Whisper provided real-time translation, revealing that the crew was divided between those who wanted to fight and those who wanted to live. "Commander," Zephyra spoke for the first time, her voice carrying harmonics that somehow penetrated the comm system, despite its technological nature. "Your people value strength above all else. There is no strength in pointless death. Allow us to complete our mission, and you will live to fight another day." The silence stretched for nearly a minute before Commander Vextar responded. "Very well. But know that this mercy will not be forgotten. The Empire does not forgive such humiliation." "Understood," Marcus replied. "Star Whisper, begin docking procedures with the refugee transport." The next 10 minutes were the longest of Marcus's life. The Devastator's cargo bays were massive, easily capable of holding all the remaining refugees, but transferring 150 terrified beings from a failing ship to a Volani warship was a complex operation. Every second brought the enemy reinforcements closer. "Last group aboard," Star Whisper announced as the final Cathani family entered the cruiser's cargo bay. "All refugees are secured and life support is stable." Marcus felt a surge of triumph, but it was tempered by the knowledge that they still had to escape. The Volani reinforcements were now visible on long-range sensors, approaching fast. "Commander Vextar," Marcus announced over the comm, "the evacuation is complete. We're transferring command back to you and departing. Thank you for your cooperation." "Human," the Volani commander replied, his voice carrying a note that might have been respect. "You fight with honor for beings you have never met. This is unusual." "Maybe," Marcus agreed as he and Zephyra headed back toward their ship. "But it's what we do." As the Wanderer undocked from the Devastator and accelerated away from the battle zone, Marcus couldn't help but feel a sense of profound satisfaction. They had saved 200 lives, captured a Volani warship long enough to complete their mission, and demonstrated that sometimes the impossible was just another word for difficult. "Star Whisper," he said as they reached safe distance, "set course for the Kepler expanse, and plot a course that keeps us well away from Volani space." "Already done," the AI replied, "though I should note that our actions today will likely have consequences. The Volani do not forget, and they do not forgive." Marcus looked at Zephyra, who was using her telepathic abilities to comfort the traumatized Cathani refugees. Through their link, he felt her pride in what they had accomplished and her growing admiration for human tenacity. "Let them come," Marcus said quietly. "We'll deal with whatever happens when it happens. Right now, 200 people are alive who shouldn't be. That's enough." In the cargo bay, Cathani families held each other and whispered prayers in languages Marcus couldn't understand, but he didn't need translation to recognize gratitude when he saw it. 3 months later, the Wanderer approached the coordinates where Zephyra's people were supposed to be waiting. The Kepler expanse stretched before them like a jeweled tapestry, with nebulae and shades of emerald and gold providing a stunning backdrop for their final approach. But as they drew closer to the designated meeting point, it became clear that something was wrong. "I'm not detecting any Atiri vessels," Star Whisper reported, her voice carrying a note of concern that had become increasingly common as they neared their destination. "The research station that was supposed to be here shows no signs of recent activity." Marcus felt Zephyra's growing anxiety through their link. After everything they had been through together, the rescue, the battle with the Volani, the long journey across space, the possibility that her people had simply moved on was heartbreaking. "Perhaps they relocated to a more secure location," Zephyra suggested, but her mental voice lacked conviction. My people are cautious by nature. If they detected signs of Volani expansion in this sector, they might have withdrawn to safer space. Star Whisper, run a full sensor sweep, Marcus ordered. Look for any signs of Atari technology, no matter how old. The AI complied, her enhanced sensors probing every asteroid and gas cloud in the system. The Cathani refugees, who had spent the journey learning basic human customs and helping with ship maintenance, gathered on the bridge to watch the search. Their large, gentle eyes reflected the same hope and anxiety that Marcus felt. I am detecting trace energy signatures consistent with bioship technology, Star Whisper announced after several minutes. The readings are approximately 6 months old and suggest that a small fleet was present here for an extended period before departing. Can you determine which direction they went? Zafira asked. Negative. The energy trail has dissipated too much to provide directional information. However, I am detecting something else of interest. On the main display, an image appeared of what looked like a crystalline structure floating in the void between asteroids. It was clearly artificial, roughly spherical, and pulsing with the same bioluminescent patterns that Marcus had seen aboard Star Whisper's original body. It's a message beacon, Zephyra said, her voice filled with sudden hope. My people use these to leave information for other Atari vessels. It may contain instructions about where they have gone. The beacon retrieval took 2 hours of careful maneuvering. The device was designed to be collected only by ships equipped with Atari biotechnology. But Star Whisper had maintained enough of her original capabilities to interface with it successfully. When the beacon activated, the bridge filled with harmonious tones that seemed to resonate in frequencies just beyond human hearing. Zephyra placed her hands on the communication console, her face lighting up as she absorbed the information contained within the crystalline matrix. It is from my research partner. Synthesis of distant stars, she translated, tears of joy gathering in her storm-colored eyes. The expedition was forced to relocate when Volani scout ships began patrolling this sector. But they have established a new research station in the Andromeda system, only 2 weeks' travel from here. That's great news, Marcus said, genuinely happy for her. But he couldn't shake a growing sadness at the thought of their journey coming to an end. Over the past months, Zephyra had become more than just a passenger. She was a friend, a partner, and something he wasn't quite ready to name. There is more, Zephyra continued, her mental voice carrying a complex mixture of emotions. The message includes a detailed report of Volani activities throughout this sector. Marcus, they have enslaved or destroyed 17 civilizations in the past year alone. What we witnessed with the Cathani was not an isolated incident. It is part of a massive expansion campaign. Marcus felt his jaw clench as the implications sank in. The Volani weren't just raiders or opportunistic slavers. They were conducting systematic genocide across entire sectors of space. The message also contains something else, Star Whisper added. A formal request from the Atari High Council for any information about the human vessel that rescued exploration of wind patterns and demonstrated unprecedented compassion toward unknown species. Marcus blinked in surprise. They know about us? News travels quickly among exploration vessels, Zephyra explained. When Synthesis of Distant Stars learned that I was alive and had been rescued by a human, he apparently shared the story with every Itari ship in the network. You have become something of a legend, Marcus Chen. Before Marcus could respond to this unexpected development, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The tactical display lit up with contact indicators as a fleet of vessels dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. Volani Task Force, Star Whisper announced grimly. 12 heavy cruisers and support vessels. They appear to be conducting a systematic search pattern. Marcus felt ice in his veins as he realized what was happening. The Volani hadn't forgotten their humiliation at the refugee rescue. They had tracked his ship across space, following the trail of their long journey to this remote system. They're looking for us, he said quietly. And they will find us. Zafira added through their link. My people's beacon was not designed to be stealthy. They will detect it within the hour. Marcus looked around the bridge at the faces of his unlikely crew. Zephyra, brilliant and courageous, who had risked everything to explore the unknown. Star Whisper, whose consciousness had found new life in human technology. The Cathani refugees, who had already lost their homeworld and were now facing capture by the very forces they had escaped. Options? He asked. Limited, Star Whisper replied. We can attempt to evade them in the asteroid field. but they have sufficient numbers to establish a search grid. Eventually they will find us. What about the Andromeda's system? Marcus asked. Could we reach Zephyra's people in time to warn them? Negative. The Volani fleet would intercept us long before we could escape the system. Marcus closed his eyes and thought furiously. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and trapped in a system with limited hiding places. But they had one advantage that the Volani didn't expect. They had already proven that humans were capable of accomplishing the impossible when the stakes were high enough. Star Whisper, he said slowly. How long would it take to modify the beacon to send a message to the Atari research station? Approximately 30 minutes, assuming I can adapt its biotransmission protocols to carry human-compatible data. Do it. Send them everything we've learned about Volani expansion, troop movements, tactical capabilities, everything. If we can't escape to warn them, at least we can make sure they have the information they need to protect themselves. Marcus, Zephyra said through their link. What are you planning? He looked at her with a sad smile. Something appropriately human. We're going to make sure that our story ends with everyone else being safe, even if we don't make it out ourselves. Over the next 20 minutes, they worked frantically to encode their accumulated data about Volani operations into a format the beacon could transmit. Star Whisper adapted her bioship protocols to carry human military analysis, creating a hybrid message that represented the best of both species' knowledge. Message prepared and ready for transmission, Star Whisper announced. However, sending it will reveal our exact location to the Volani fleet. I know, Marcus replied. Zephyra, I need you to add something to the message. Tell your people about the Cathani, about what we've seen. Tell them that humans are ready to stand with anyone who opposes Volani expansion. Marcus, this is not necessary. You have already done more than... Yes, it is necessary, he interrupted gently. Someone has to take a stand. Might as well be us. But before he could give the order to transmit, Zephyra suddenly straightened, her eyes widening with amazement. Wait, she said urgently. I am detecting something. Bioship signatures approaching from the direction of Andromeda's. The sensor display confirmed her words. A fleet of Atari vessels was emerging from hyperspace, their organic hulls glowing with bioluminescent patterns that spoke of health and power. At their head was a ship larger than any Marcus had seen, its crystalline spires reaching out like the branches of an impossible tree. 43 vessels, Star Whisper reported with something like awe in her voice, including what appears to be a World Seed ship, one of the Atari's mobile research cities. They came, Zephyra whispered, tears streaming down her face. They came looking for us. The lead Atari vessel transmitted a message that filled the bridge with harmonies so complex that Marcus felt them in his bones. Zephyra translated with a voice full of wonder. To the human vessel that has sheltered our lost daughter, this is confluence of starlight and wisdom of the Atari Deep Exploration Fleet. We have come to honor the species that showed our people what courage truly means. Stand with us, Marcus Chen of Earth, and let us show the galaxy what becomes of those who prey upon the innocent. Marcus watched as the Atari fleet formed a protective formation around the Wanderer, their bioships pulsing with weapon systems that made Volani technology look primitive by comparison. The Volani task force, which had seemed so overwhelming moments before, now appeared small and vulnerable. Open a channel to the Volani commander,